Hello, Bobs. We're back with chapter 2 of The Wandering Heir, a Christmas story by Charles Reade. Chapter 2 is rather short, so let's get to it. Chapter 2. In this miserable condition of servitude, James Annesley remained nearly 7 years, having been indented for an extreme period, and many a sigh he heaved, and many a tear he shed in solitude, thinking of what he had been, and what he had a right to be, and what he was. But being now a full-grown young man, tall and very robust, he could do his work, and his misery was alleviated by caution, but above all by the blessed thought that his servitude was drawing to an end, since a white man could only be bound for a limited term. But let all shadow statesmen and pedantic lawyers who trifle with the equal rights of humanity be warned that you cannot play fast and loose with things so sacred. The mother country in its stupidity allowed its citizens to be made slaves for a time. The Pilgrim Fathers and their grandchildren, though no men ever valued liberty more in their own persons or talked more about it, had not that disinterested respect for it which marks their noble descendants, and so they, by a bylaw or custom, enlarged the term of servitude. This they contrived by ordering that if one of these temporary slaves misbehaved grossly, and above all attempted escape, his term of servitude could be enlarged in proportion by judges who were in the interest of the planters. So the game was, when the white slave's term of servitude drew near to make his life intolerable, then in his despair he rebelled or ran for it, and was recaptured and re-enslaved by this bylaw passed in the colony. Where there is a multitude, there's a mixture, and not every planter played this heartless dodge, but too many did, and no man more barbarously than this Drummond. By the help of an unscrupulous overseer who did and said whatever he was ordered, he starved, he insulted, he flogged, he made his slave's life intolerable. And so, in a fit of desperation, James started one night for the Delaware River. He armed himself with a little bill-hook, for he was quite resolved not to be taken alive. In the morning they found he was gone and followed him horse and foot, but they did not catch him, for rather a curious reason. He had the ill luck to miss his road and got to the Susquehanna instead. He found his mistake when too late, but he did not give up all hope, for he saw some ships and a town into which he resolved to penetrate at nightfall. It was then about 10 o'clock. Meantime, he thought it was best to hide, and coming to two roads, one of which turned to his right and passed through a wood, he turned off that way and lay down in shelter, and unseen, though close to the roadside. Here fatigue overpowered him, and he went to sleep fast as a church and slept till 4 in the afternoon. Then he awoke with voices in his ears, and peeping through the leafy screen, he saw with surprise that there was company close to him. There was a man haltering a horse to a tree near him, and another, already haltered, a gentlewoman in a riding habit, stood looking on, while another man drew provisions and wine from some saddlebags, and spread a cloth on the grass, and made every preparation for a repast. Then they all three sat down and enjoyed themselves, so that poor hungry James sighed involuntarily and peeped through the leaves. The lady heard him, turned, saw him, screamed, pointed at him, and in a moment the men were upon him with drawn swords, crying, "Traitor! Spy!" But James whipped behind a tree and parleyed. "No traitor, sir, but a poor runaway slave who never sets eyes on you before." The men hesitated, and he soon convinced them of his innocence. One of them laughed and said, "Why, then, there's naught to fear from thee." The lady, however, still anxious, cross-questioned him herself. His answers satisfied her, his appearance pleased her, and it ended to his advantage. They made him sit down with them and eat and drink heartily. At last the lady let out they were fugitives too, and could feel for him, and she said, "We are going on board a ship bound for Holland. She lies at anchor waiting for us, and if you can run with us, we will even take you on board." But in sooth, we must lose no time. They started. The gentleman had the lady behind him, and James ran with his hand on the other horse's mane. But losing breath, the man, who was well mounted, took him up behind him. Night fell, and there they went more slowly, and James, to ease the good horse, walked by his side. But presently there was a fierce galloping of horses behind them, and lights seemed flying at them from behind. The lady looked back and screamed, "'Tis he himself, we are lost." The men had only time to dismount and drew their swords when the party was upon them with a score of blades flashing in the torchlight. The men defended themselves, and James, forgetting it was no quarrel of his, laid about him with his bill-hook, but the combat was too unequal. In 3 minutes the lady, in a dead swoon, was laid before one horseman. Her lover and his servant were bound upon their own horses, and James was worse treated still, for his hands were tied together and fastened to a horse's tail. In this wretched plight they were carried to the nearest village, and well guarded for the night in separate rooms. At daybreak they were marched again, and James Annesley, in that horrible attitude of a captive felon, was drawn at a horse's tail through 4 hooting villages and lodged in Chester Gaol. Law did not halt there. They were all 4 put to the bar, and then first he learned by the evidence who his companions were and what he had been doing when he drew bill-hook in their favor. The lady was daughter of a trader in this very town of Chester. Her father, finding her in love with someone beneath her, had compelled her to marry a rich planter. She hated him, and in evil hour listened to her lover, who persuaded her to fly with all she could lay her hands on. The money and jewels were found in the saddlebags. The husband was vindictive, the crime twofold. The guilty pair, the servant and James, who was taken fighting on their side, were condemned. James made an effort to separate his fate from the others. He told the judge who he was and what master he had run away from, declared it was a mere accident his being there. He had been surprised by the sudden attack on persons who, whatever their faults, had been good to him. The judge took a note while he was pleading in arrest of judgment, but said nothing, and they were all 4 condemned to stand on the gallows for 1 hour with a rope around their necks, to be whipped on their bare backs with so many lashes well laid on, and then imprisoned for several years. It's nice that they put a little cherub there to end the chapter. Who's this? Is this him? I guess that's the same one that's been on every chapter, hasn't it? Guessing that is Lord Jemmy. Little Jemmy. Now, see, there he was a baby. Let's see what he was like in chapter... Oh, that's right, this is chapter 2, you dingle schmitz. We'll go to page 42. Wandering Heir. No, it doesn't show him. It just shows this. What the hell is that? Is that a turtle? I don't know what that is. Can't decipher it. It's not a turtle. Unless the turtle's standing up, looking at the grime beneath his fingernails. All right, that's all. Goodbye.